So I think something has been happening. G'day folks, Wren here, and it is time for another 5 Friday video. I didn't actually plan on doing another 5 Friday video already, but I have just come back from holiday. When I came back from holiday, I went on to Bookstagram and something had happened while I was away. I don't know any of the details, but there are just suddenly a lot of people really supporting the queer community, which is not a bad thing at all, but it's like everyone was reminding everyone that they were a safe space. So clearly something has happened. I don't know what. I have my guesses, because it's usually always the same issue. Also, it's so hot. I'm filming this at 8 o'clock at night because it is currently 42 degrees and it's hot. I have the air conditioner on, I have my fan on, I'm hot, obviously. So just putting it out there, if you couldn't tell, I am very queer. I'm a trans, non-binary, biromantic person. I also love reading queer books, so I'm going to recommend some queer books, specifically trans books, and these are just 5 that I have read that I think are criminally underrated and everyone needs to go read them. So you know, everyone knows about Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. It's fantastic, everyone go read it. I love it, it's one of my favourite books, but that's definitely not underrated. So we are only doing underrated trans books here. To start off, we'll go with the one book that I don't own yet, because I'm waiting for it to come out in paperback. You know how sometimes there are certain books that you want like specific formats of. This book I specifically want a paperback of instead of a hardback. I don't know why. It's just the vibe. So the first book I'm going to recommend is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. I only read this last year and I honestly have not stopped thinking about it since. It's amazing. It is a dystopian story. There is an end of the world-esque cult thing happening, and the cult has this like one person that they think is going to help rid the world of things by dying. They're going to sacrifice this person and it'll be some big huge event. This person is our main character. They are a trans man and they are escaping this cult because they don't want to die, which fair. While our main character is running away, they end up stumbling into a little queer family of a bunch of queer teens that when their world was ending, they found solace in their local queer youth group, and they've just set up a base there, and it's really cute, a little like found family thing going on. And our trans main character is kind of hiding their identity a little bit. Like, I'm not describing this well, but it's just good. And I don't like dystopians at all. Dystopians are my least favorite genre, but I ended up reading this and falling in love with it. I liked so many of these things. Something I really enjoyed was just getting into the head of our main character, because they've got a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of stuff happening in the world, and they're also, you know, struggling to be trans in an end of the world situation. So if you want a queer YA, the good kind, dystopian book, then I highly recommend Hell Followed With Us. It's a little gem, honestly. Like, I'm still thinking about it like 4 months later. It's good. Next up is Between Real and Perfect by Ray Stove. I am obsessed with this book. I love it so much. I devoured it the first time I read it, and I immediately had to go buy a copy because I need this in my life. This has one of my favourite tropes, which is theatre queers. So in this we have our main character who at the beginning of the story hasn't figured out his identity, but through this book he discovers that he is trans, and he goes through the process of socially transitioning and living as his true self. But what was really great about this was our main character discovered his gender identity through playing Romeo and Juliet. So he was cast as Romeo, and the teacher originally assigned that role to him thinking that he was a different gender than he actually ended up being, because the teacher was trying to like shock the audience and having what he thought was not a male playing Romeo. Am I making sense? But then throughout playing such a masculine character, our main character starts to realize, ooh, I'm comfortable like this, and I really like what's happening here. And so then, yes, eventually he does transition and figure out that he is trans, and that was beautiful in itself. And this was a really good coming of age story about discovering your gender identity and how scary that can be, because our main character at the beginning of the story, he is in a long-term relationship with this girl, and this girl has always thought that she was a lesbian, and then her partner changes gender and she's having a really tough time with that. That was a really important storyline for me in this, because I don't see it often. It was really important. It's a really important message that this book has. And I just love our main character discovering himself, even though it's really hard for him and he has to go through a lot to be comfortable with himself. And he goes to queer support groups to help him with this, and it's a lot to put on a teenager, that's for sure. But this was beautiful, and it has theatre queers and it's trans, and it's just such a great story, and I really wish more people would read it, because I want to talk to people about this. Next up we have a middle grade, and that is The Other Boy by M.G. Hennessy. This is one of my favourite books of all time. It is a trans middle grade book, and I know everyone is well aware of the other main trans middle grade book, which is great, and that is Melissa by Alex Gino. It's a great book, but everyone knows about that one. People don't know about this amazing book. I love it. One of my favorites of all time is about our main character who has been passing at his new school, and he has made lots of friends, and he's on the baseball team, and his parents are divorced, but because he is quite young, he is obviously needing their consent to go through medical transitioning and even just taking some hormone blockers, because he is about to head into puberty, and that can be a really awful time for trans people. So his mother is very accepting of his gender, but his father isn't. One of the great things about this book was you got to see some of those medical transitioning aspects. Nothing too serious happens, but you know, we see our main character going to the doctor and talking to the doctor and his parents about starting hormone blockers and potentially starting testosterone and what that means, and you know, coming from someone who is so young to then go through those things, like that's a huge decision, and it handles that very well in this book. It's a really great middle grade story, and I think it is criminally underrated. Okay, next up I have a comic series, so something a little different, but that is Class 6 by several people. Well, it's produced by Craven Comics. Okay, by Fernando Velez. So this is a indie published comic series by a queer BIPOC author, and it's so good. This is actually the first 6 volumes in one collection, and it is basically the origin stories of all of these superheroes. All of them are queer. Absolutely every single one of them is queer, and they are all fighting for queer rights. And it's beautiful. It is very classically a superhero comic, if you get what I mean there. As much as I want to talk about all of these characters, I'm going to talk about my favourite character, who is this lovely lady at the top here. Her name is Navia, and she is a trans woman, and she has had it rough, and you see that in here. She had a really horrible life, which is very true for many trans people. Oh, she's such a powerhouse, and her superpower is like shape shifting almost, but to look like other people, not animals or anything, just people. And she can also control her hair or something to be like a weapon-esque thing. Look, there's a bit of the trans flag. Yeah, look at this. What a powerhouse. The last book in this 5 Friday underrated trans recommendations that I'm going to talk about is one that I think is kind of the reason for all of this discourse that's been happening, in a way. And that is Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasolopus. I'm never going to get that name. By Chuck Tingle. This is a parody on that particular wizarding school book series, you know? But trans. So this is where I'm assuming all of the discourse has come from. Not this book, but what this book is parodying. Parodying? What it's a parody of. The author that does that book series is disgusting. I'm just going to come out and say it. She's disgusting. Her views are awful and I hate them. I do not support them at all. I'm just going to assume that something has been said or there's been new hype for that series, and so discourse has happened. So I'm very obviously going to recommend everyone go read this. This is just fun. I have so many tabs in here from just the shenanigans and the audacity that Chuck Tingle had to write this. There are so many instances of just clear references to that book series, but like in a really like shady kind of way, in the best way possible. But we have our trans main character Harriet, and then we also have a trans love interest as well. And even though this book is just full of crack jokes, it's also a really great exploration of being trans. I'm going to amend that. It's not a great representation of being trans because from what I can tell, the author is not trans, and you can see that throughout the book. Like, as a trans non-binary person, I did feel that there were some like little nuance things missing, but what I really appreciated about this book and why I'm recommending it is because our two trans main characters are in a relationship, and there are a few sex scenes in this book because it's Chuck Tingle, so of course there are. And in those, our two characters, they have a conversation about body parts and the correct terminology that should be used for those body parts that are gender affirming. I can't even describe to you like the weird kind of joy and relief I had while reading those sex scenes, where it was like, no, you call this particular thing this because it is my this. There's so many words I can't say on the internet. But you get what I mean, right? That's honestly the main reason I'm going to recommend it, because it was affirming in that way. There's definitely a lot missing with this, but it is such a fun read, especially just to like make fun of that book series. One of the characters is named Bumbleborn, and when you first meet him, one of the first things he says is, "I'm gay." Just putting that out there now so it is on page, established, not some random thing that gets told that you should have known later on, but not canon, you know? That conversation happens and it's hilarious, and many more like that happen, and it's just such a fun time, and it really did alleviate some of my like hurt feelings about what that author has said. This was a band-aid that I didn't think I needed. It's a fun time and I highly recommend. Here are some of my underrated trans recommendations. If you have any more trans books that you would like to recommend, please let me know down below. I have so many on my TBR that I just need to get to, but I am always looking for more trans rep books. And just, you know, further putting it out there to any trans person watching this, or any queer person at all, you are loved, you are beautiful, you are strong, and no matter what anyone says, you can get through this and you will find your people. The people that support you through anything and everything, the people that stand by your side while others throw the rocks. You will find your space. Don't listen to the hate. Listen to the love that is in the queer community, and love yourself, because that is the most important thing, and you are amazing. Yeah, I didn't really mean to turn that into a super emotional thing, but it's kind of what I do. In the past week I've made 3 of my friends cry. Sorry. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.